And we're live. Welcome back to Real Actors. This is episode number 2. Didn't know that we were going to do an episode number 2 this quickly for Real Actors. I thought I was going to be rotating between this and Director's Cut a little bit, but you know what? Real Actors got a lot of good feedback for talking about Jim Carrey on the very first episode. And, you know, like the first episode, I have with me my co-host, Tony Walters. Oh, no, I'm not here today. Oh, okay. So Tony's still on assignment. And then I also have Becky Morgan here with me. But I think actually, right?
Actually, yeah, but you can do the sock puppet thing, the hand puppet thing.
Oh, hello,
that
Becky.
Works. There you go.
I feel like I sound like Bob when he's talking, like he's doing the turkey in Bob's Burger. Do you watch Bob's Burgers?
I do not watch Bob's Burgers.
Oh my God, you need to watch Bob's Burgers.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up the chat. So, so I was kind of by my lonesome. Well, but I wasn't. Like, it was actually fantastic talking everything Jim Carrey last week because I had a very active chat. You guys made it so easy to kind of go at it alone. Plus, I rambled on. You guys were there. I was there. You know, I could ramble on about Jim Carrey for, I think it was like almost an hour and a half. Ask this lady. He's kind of a big part of my life.
Yes. I think after you saw the first Ace Ventura, you were maybe 7 or 8. And we had to endure Jim Carrey impersonations and you talking with your butt cheeks for about 3 years, at least after that consecutively. That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that's very reasonable. I'm just pulling up the chat. So this week I kind of threw it out to Twitter just because, like I said, I wasn't planning on doing another one of these so fast. So I'm just like, hey, what do you guys and gals want to hear from or about? What actor do you guys want to see? And I got some very, very interesting feedback. I got some Benicio del Toro's. I got some Arnold Schwarzenegger, which that one might not happen, but you know, maybe the Benicio del Toro one for sure. But resoundingly, it was Ewan McGregor. So Ewan McGregor, you know, luckily I'm a huge fan of his, and I think Becky is as well. And we're not going to be going over like the entire catalog of Ewan McGregor films because there's a lot of kind of obscure ones, but we will talk about some of the obscure ones as well, and just some that I haven't seen and I know Becky hasn't seen. But we are going to dig deep into, I think we got at least 12 movies to kind of go through and talk about. And again, this isn't going to be in chronological order. It's just going to be kind of talking about his style and just about him. So why did you want to talk about Ewan McGregor?
I have had a perpetual crush on Ewan McGregor since I can remember.
Me too.
I don't remember. I remember, it's really funny because I remember, seeing Trainspotting, obviously. And then I also remember the other film with Cameron Diaz. What's the other one?
Life Less Ordinary.
Thank you. I was obsessed with Life Less Ordinary. And then he was on an episode of ER. On TV. I
don't remember that.
Yeah,
wow.
It was. Yeah, I remember because I was like, "That's the dude. That's the dude with his little shag haircut," and he was super adorable. So yeah, I could talk about Ewan McGregor all day. So.
I mean, you and I think ER came about when we were still living together, when we were kind of
when we were kids.
Younger. I don't remember this. Was this one of the earlier episodes?
Yeah, ER was definitely when I was a teenager, when we were still living at home. When I was still living at home, and yes, we were sharing a home at that time, and ER was on too late for you to watch, so it was on at 10 o'clock at night. It was like after all the like primetime family shows, and then ER came on after, so you were most likely in bed asleep, which is why you probably missed it. But and Ewan wasn't huge then. He wasn't really big, but he was in an episode. I think I can't remember exactly the premise, but he played a criminal from what I can remember.
That's interesting.
I do remember.
And by the way, I do love your setup now. And if you guys have seen the last couple weeks, I've been filming from the new balcony, but I decided to set up the set a little bit early. If you follow me for any of the magic stuff, you'll know that the summer Hive Mind road trip is starting Wednesday, and that's going to be at Mox Bellevue on location. But right now, I decided, if anyone follows and wants to hear about myself or anyone else of any any of the other panelists that join me on here about the movies, you guys get the debut of the new John Cave, so to speak. That's what this is all about. And I also, I'm rusty. I haven't done one of these in a while. I have a special guest. Becky, did you bring a special guest?
I did not have a special guest. I would have brought one had I known.
Wow.
I know.
Sorry. Yeah, this is a milk nitro stout where you could just pour the hell out of it like as hard as you want. And it it's so wonderful. Have you ever had any nitro beer, Beck?
I have not. I'm not a big beer person, but my boyfriend is. Micah is.
I like Micah.
Yeah. You and Micah could get down with the beer stuff a lot.
Yeah.
I feel you have a lot of that in common.
Yeah, this is fantastic stuff. This isn't the first time I've had this beer, but it's just like a big beer milkshake. So cheers, and thank you, Chris, in the chat from Legendary Mana. That's I kind of asked the chat if we are echoey because I was just kind of worried about that, and he says we're not. So let's jump in to the Ewan McGregor, so to speak. And like I said, we're not going to go, he had some really great ones to start the career. Gentleman's from Scotland. He's about 47 years old now, married for quite a bit. And it seems like, unfortunately, he got separated from his wife last year. Yeah, we're going real deep with the Ewan McGregor trivia. But yeah, let's, I think, Shallow Grave is one that I've seen a very, very long time ago. I think that's one of Danny Boyle's first films. And I really want to do a Danny Boyle director's cut and just focus on Danny Boyle. Although we're going to be talking about Danny Boyle a lot during this episode because he's a frequent collaborator with Ewan McGregor. But yeah, I just love Danny Boyle so much. I think he's at least top 5 of my favorite directors. Are you pretty caught up on Danny Boyle films?
I am not caught up on Danny Boyle, actually. I think I'd have to do my homework on that one.
Okay.
Womp womp.
I think I don't know. It's really not just you. It's like no one, I don't know. It's 127 hours later or whatever. It's 28 days. Slumdog Millionaire. Anyways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And see, I think Danny Boyle does a lot of stuff that people don't know he does. Even. What's that?
I have the 28 Days box set.
Oh yeah.
Because that's like one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Yeah, and Franco Bigby is in it.
Franco Bigby
from Trainspotting.
Oh yeah.
Or Begbie. Sorry, I didn't say it with the accent. But yes.
Oh, you're talking about Robert Carlyle.
Robert Carlyle, yes.
Yes.
I was just trying to be, clever and call him Begbie. But yes, let's start because my introduction, I believe my introduction to Ewan McGregor was Trainspotting. It might have been you and I watching it together, probably at a way too young age for myself to be watching it. But Trainspotting to me, the very first Trainspotting is still in my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I would agree. Trainspotting is epic. For me, what really spoke to me, because I'm a huge music fan, and you know this about me, is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for Trainspotting was probably on rotation in my CD player or my cassette player, whatever was happening at the time.
Right.
I think it was probably CD by then. But yeah, it was on heavy rotation for sure. But the movie itself was, I think, on a completely different level. With the edits and the cinematography, the setting of being in like this, sort of rundown Scotland. And, I've always been a big fan of British culture. And so it just spoke to me on so many levels. Plus it was just like cool to the gross factor appealed to me for some reason. Like, it's just like, I still watch it and go, oof, but I love it. It's amazing. All the acting is amazing. And everybody in it, just the energy and all the actors work so beautifully and synergistically that the film is perfect to me.
Yeah, and you could tell that, filmmaker Danny Boyle, I believe he's Scottish too. He's at least from the UK. I'm pretty sure he's from Scotland. He definitely, it was like watching Ryan Coogler film Creed, where you feel like you're there. Like he did a very good job of making sure that you're actually there and feel great. Sorry, my beautiful little child just came in and showed me her new tutu for ballerina class. So That's the interruption that keeps giving, or it keeps, whatever. Now I'm all thrown off, but it was very cute.
Cannot wait.
Yes, indeed. Trainspotting to Obi-Wan, right? Flippin' Zippo in the chat said, but yeah, it was just you could definitely tell that he influenced a lot of other filmmakers. I think Guy Ritchie took a lot of his style of shooting, and he still edits films to these day the same way. It's a lot of fast cuts and jump cuts, like you said, zoom cuts. But the performances are what stood out, because it was a very stylistically fun, hyper realistic movie, because it's like, it is very, you are just watching a movie about a bunch of junkies, but it's a ton of fun, and it's hyper realistic with Mark Renton, who is Ewan McGregor, coming out of the, getting lost in the toilet, and the detox scene with the baby on the ceiling. They're just, you're watching something that should be awful, but it's filmed in a way where it's a ton of fun, and it ends in a very optimistic note. I always say that Trainspotting and Requiem for a Dream are a very good companion piece. A, because they're both about the same subject matter, but B, because Requiem for a Dream is a masterpiece. But after watching that, I just feel terrible about life. And then you go watch Trainspotting, where it's still kind of about the same thing, but it ends on such an upbeat and such an uptick. It's very uplifting. So it's a nice companion piece.
I agree. And I mean, Trainspotting, the subject matter is very dark, obviously, and very heavy. I mean, we have a baby's death, and we have someone dying of AIDS. And all of it is an addiction, and what it does to a person. And in that way, it's very dark subject matter. And then you have these actors who are playing the roles in such a way that they're awful, mostly awful people, but you're rooting for them, because at the core, they're, with the exception maybe Robert Carlyle's character, at the core, you're looking at people that are just struggling to live life, and then just happen to be junkies. You almost forget, it's, and then you have this almost Three Stooges vibe when they're being funny, especially like from Spud, and it's so multifaceted, and that's what makes it such a great film, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great comparison, because to the Three Stooges, because these people just can't get out of their own way, and they're just kind of, it's like they would function normally, but they're always kind of putting their own self barriers in their way with being addicts. And yeah, you're watching a buddy of theirs die from AIDS. You're watching a death of a baby, and later on in Trainspotting too. And I just want to point this out. All these films that we're going to be talking about, if you haven't seen any of them, it's full spoilers, because I do want to talk about these in depth. So yeah, it even kind of wraps up. It's been a little bit since I saw Trainspotting 1, but in Trainspotting 2, it does kind of wrap up that whole through line of who the baby was, and who the baby belonged to, which was kind of a kick in the pants. And as much as Trainspotting 1 ends on an uptick, you get to see, 20 years down the line, what everyone's doing now in Trainspotting 2. And it is not as optimistic and as uplifting. Trainspotting 2 is a fantastic film, and one that I didn't, when I heard there was going to be a Trainspotting 2, I almost did like I was kind of hesitant about getting excited about it, even though Danny Boyle came back and all the 4 main original cast returned as well. But it's just like, I don't know. I felt like it was a great, self-contained film. I don't know if I wanted to see, what came after, and what came after is kind of what you expect, but still was nice to kind of jump back into the world. And you said you saw most of Trainspotting too.
Yeah, I mean, I did see the reveal about.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did see the reveal. It's very distracting. I saw the reveal when Mark calls out Sick Boy and says, "Hey, you let your kid die because you were too busy doing drugs." And I think that's about where I stopped. I think Frank was grabbing Viagra from a fridge, but that was about where I stopped, because you have tutus, I have homework. So today there was there was a child interruption a little bit, but that's okay. But I think I got about 3/4 of the way through the film. What I'm finding about that film specifically is that it obviously moves a lot slower than the first Trainspotting, like a lot. And yeah, and like you were saying, do I really want to know what happens after? Like he rides off into the sunset with all the money, and you want to think that he had this amazing success story, and then it kind of, this Trainspotting 2 definitely is touching more on a realistic outcome where they're all older and they're all still having problems and they all have issues, and and all that. So I don't know, it's interesting, but it is so far a wee bit depressing, just because it's all these grown men still trying to not fuck up but still fucking up completely. So that, I found that, yes, it does pull the plot line a little bit, or at least the character's plot line, through to the second film, but in a much more real, it's almost like this evolution of reality, which I don't know if I'm for yet, or if I'm completely against it. So I don't, until I see the end of the film, I can't really comment on that.
Yeah, and it's just like, what else would have happened? Where else could these people's lives gone? Because, at least to the point where you are now, it's like, yeah, Mark Renton kind of, and that's, who we're focusing on is Ewan McGregor. His character does kind of, the first one's kind of turns into a heist movie at the end, and like a Three Stooges heist movie. But then, he's the one that gets all the money and kind of screws over his pals, except for Spud. And the one that he probably affects the worst is Spud, by giving him that $4,000, like Spud says, which talk about gross factor, seeing Spud try to commit suicide with a baggie, and then just like when he walks in, he just vomits all over his own face. It's pretty brutal. But and he's just like, you fucked up my life. He's like, but I you were the one that I kind of look after, and I still gave you your shit. He's like, yeah, I put it all in my veins. Like, what do you think a junkie's gonna do with 4,000 pounds? It is still funny. The scene where they're doing that, where it's like that weird Civil War bar scene, is hilarious. Johnny Lee Miller is kind of hard to look at in this film.
I think it's so bizarre, because you think that Spud, the actor, is the other Ewan. You think that he would have aged the worst, because I would say he was the most unique looking.
Yes.
Out of all of them. But yeah, I looked at Johnny Lee Miller and I was like, in some shots, I forget that it's him. I'm like, did they get another actor? But he definitely is definitely wearing his age a little bit more. Ewan looks exactly the same. I mean, that man, he's like one of those vampire people who just doesn't age ever.
I was a little bit worried at the opening shot when he's on the treadmill, and I'm like, oh God, I can't watch Jesus Ewan McGregor for 90 minutes.
Right. Yeah, with the long hair. Yeah. And then obviously they shave his head to make him look more recognizable. But yeah, I mean, Ewan's still Ewan, and I think that the character Mark is still I'm still rooting for him. Like I'm almost like I kind of had this expectation in the back of my head that he'd come in to Trainspotting 2, and you see everybody's kind of a mess, and he's gonna come in and rescue everybody. Like when he got on the plane and they came back, I thought, okay, well, he's going to come in and he's going to help Sick Boy get clean, and they're going to go legit, and he's going to save everybody. But that's not the direction it goes in at all.
Right.
So,
which is funny, because that's what, when he's making Spud detox and stuff like that, and he's just like, what, and I like that Spud is just like trying to find, his niche. He goes and tries to box terribly, and then that's just like a scene, and it's never mentioned again. Like I thought that was going to come back later. Like I thought he was going to fight someone or something. It's like, no, he just tried boxing and he got knocked out, and that was literally it, and it was great. But yeah, it was just like his addiction, his new addiction to get him off, get his mind right, was to get away and completely go. So I thought that, it was a little bit thin for especially his character, because of, something like that, where he just completely made that decision to rip off his friends and disappear and start a new life. So he had this kind of like pseudo heart attack or whatever. and the doctor gave him like 30 years or whatever. I don't know. I thought that plot device was a little thin, so I didn't agree with that as much. I didn't think that he was just going to jump back in. I thought the fight between him and Johnny Lee Miller when they kind of reunite was fantastic. But let's just really focus on Ewan McGregor as Mark Renton, because this is what most people, like myself, and I think you included, how we were introduced to him, and he just does this character so well. Like, he is just so and 20 years later, he doesn't skip a beat either. Like, this guy is Mark Renton, where I think that, you know, aside from heroin and all that, I think that this is probably the closest and most organic thing to the real Ewan McGregor that we see on film.
Well, I think it definitely like touches on his roots, considering in so many of his films, he has to, number one, suppress his accent and suppress like his Scottishness. And so I think we're seeing him in sort of his element, you know, and I don't mean like the drug atmosphere. I mean, Scotland and his culture and his language and his dialect is probably the most, like you said, the most organic that we've seen Ewan, as far as I can tell. You know, I mean, I don't know the gentleman myself, but I'm assuming it seemed the most natural, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Trainspotting all night, and we're not going to stop with another Danny Boyle film, because, like I said, he is a frequent collaborator with Danny Boyle. Shallow Grave, Trainspotting 1 and 2, and the next film, let's jump into A Life Less Ordinary. I've seen this movie a couple times. It's a lot of fun, completely different. You would almost there are some things that still look like a Danny Boyle film, but this is probably Danny Boyle's most Danny Boyle stylistic film, because it's almost like it has moments of, I don't know, like Adam Sandler-ish moments, where it's like all the kind of weird schlocky stuff up in heaven with Holly Hunter and the other gentlemen as angels. It's kind of a strange film, but it is a ton of fun. I saw it a long time ago, and then I just watched it a couple months ago. So it's still it's kind of fresh. It's super violent, which is funny, and it's a very different, unconventional romantic comedy. Did you like Life Less Ordinary?
I when this movie came out, I saw it in the theater, and I was obsessed with it. And you know, I was younger, so it was kind of like pop culture fluff, but smarter,
right?
Almost. So it's almost like pop culture fluff that's for someone with a brain, a little bit. I don't know. I mean, yes, it has various. I think to me, it screams 90s. It doesn't hold up super well. I mean, Cameron Diaz is the epitome to me of like a 90s pop culture actress. Do you know what I mean? She's like every rom-com in the 90s, and she's cute and adorable, and I enjoy some of her work. Some. But Ewan, this was the movie that really sealed the deal for me. It like really drove that nail in for me to fall in love with Ewan McGregor. I mean, he's funny. His comedic timing is great. He's
more charming in this than Mark Renton.
He's very, but yes, but still kind of an idiot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he plays it so well, and I just think he did a great job in this film, and it's really what made me love him, I would say. It is cute. It's a little different, but it does scream 90s for sure, I think, this film.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, the studio said, hey, make this kind of paint by the numbers thing, and Danny Boyle's like, I'll do that as much as I can, but I'm still kind of too smart and too great for that. So right. It was just like, it seems at certain points of the film, it's dialed back quite a bit from all the other Danny Boyle films, but I still have a ton of fun with this film. I think it's more family friendly, where you know, there is some interesting adult things in this, but it's fun. It's just like a nice little low stakes heist that has to do with these two people, and it's yeah, and Ewan McGregor he's hilarious in this. He shows great physical comedy in this. They kind of put him through the ringer physically, as well as Holly Hunter and everyone else. Cameron Diaz is fine. She does kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, rich bitch pretty well in this. California, you know, she does a pretty good job. But yeah, like you said, perfectly, it's very 90s.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, like you were saying, like Cameron Diaz is fine. She could probably be anyone. I do really like the contrast that between the two acting styles. Here's Cameron Diaz, who's super all American, and here's Ewan McGregor, who is super Scottish,
Right.
and the contrast is fun, you know, between the two of them. And yeah, it's cute. It's a cute movie. I mean, like I said, it's for me. I think I was in my like early 20s, late teens when it came out, and it made me like I was like, oh, Ewan McGregor. I want to get kidnapped by Ewan McGregor. You know, it was like that kind of thing. But yes, he's adorable in it. Blah blah blah. Fangirl, fangirl.
My it continued my my early year Cameron Diaz thing, because I think Mask came out first, and yeah, of course that was her debut role, and she was just very nice to look at in the Mask. And then this came out, I'm like, oh, I like Cameron Diaz, and then kind of that faded pretty quick. But yeah, that's kind of I think that's all the Danny Boyle film. So now we're gonna get to see kind of Ewan McGregor from a different lens. And that is okay. So I put out a poll on Twitter, as I do for these director's cuts and now real actors. You know, what is your, you know, asking the Twitterverse, what is your favorite Ewan McGregor performance, or your favorite director's movie, or blah, 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 blah. And very surprisingly, because I know I don't think you do Twitter that much. What do you think won?
Becky? Let's see. Favorite Ewan. If it's not, I hope it's not Star Wars. I hope
it is. It's all the Star Wars prequels. I could not believe it.
Really? So they've just left him in Obi-Wan. They just left him as Obi-Wan.
I know. I was just like, okay, because and I'm more explaining this to you, but on Twitter, when you do these polls, you could only put 4 things. So I put Trainspotting, you know, like 1 and 2. I put Big Fish, and I put A Life Less Ordinary. I think I put A Life Less Ordinary, and then I put the Star Wars prequels. Or no, I don't know, whatever. I put 3 on there because I had to leave 1 for other, so people would kind of fill in the blanks, because there was only 4 choices. But Star Wars prequel is definitely on there. It like ran away with it. It was like 58% of like 40 votes or something.
Is it like people that don't know his other work, maybe? Like they only know him, or they know him most as Obi-Wan, like, or maybe they didn't know him until they saw him as Obi-Wan. Like they're like, who's this guy? Oh, he is Ewan McGregor. Like maybe, I don't know. That's weird. But I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just if you're gonna throw all those films up, of course Star Wars is gonna win. Like no matter what actor they're talking about. You know what I mean?
Oh man, I don't know. Like, okay, so I will say he's the best part of the prequels.
Yeah,
for sure. At least the best actor, right?
I would agree. Yes. I mean, and the bar is low, because we're talking like, who's the kid that played Anakin Skywalker? Why can I not remember anybody's name today?
Oh God, Hayden Christensen,
that
right?
Guy, yes. Oh. So I mean, like I've said, the bar is a little bit low.
It's coarse and it gets everywhere.
Oh God, I can't. So yeah, of course Ewan stands out in those films. I mean, he did a great job. He did beautifully as Obi-Wan. I'm not going to argue with that point at all. I just think that if someone were to choose that, it might be because they don't really know his other work, or really have. I don't know. It's weird.
But I mean, let's talk about that, because it was a tall task. This is when, what's his face? George Lucas still has what's his face. Oh, this is when George Lucas was trying to still make Star Wars before he sold it to Disney, and he. Oh man, I mean, it was almost like, you know, I could go on for the prequels for forever, because they're just parodies of actual Star Wars. It's just people talking in green screen rooms, and it's just awful. It's just the worst. But he was trying. I mean, I think in like Phantom Menace gets a lot of shit, and everyone hates on Phantom Menace. I don't think that's the worst one of the 3 prequels. I think Attack of the Clones is by far the biggest pile of shit in that whole dumpster fire. But like you could tell that Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson were trying at least. You know, so I can't fault for that. And like you said, it is still Star Wars. It's fun. I think he did a fine job. Like if you were to pick a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think he did a fine job as far as that went.
Right. And I agree. And like you said, I do think that I like Liam Neeson. I think that, but I think ultimately Ewan is probably, like you said, I totally agree that he's the best part of those three films. So for sure, the prequels.
Ugh, man,
yeah, I know.
That's
a whole other ball of wax or whatever they say.
It's just the worst. It's just and I think by the end of it, by episode 3, especially with his fight with Grievous and stuff like that, I think that he was kind of self-aware that this was going south real fast. And you know, they do the little zoom cut on his eyes, and then he's doing the so uncivilized. And he has like, they gave him like one-liners, but you could tell he's eating it up at this point because he's like, I'm under contract. I have to be here. I'm just gonna do it. And not to say that the last scene between, you know, the Darth Vader, well, whatever, the Anakin and him fight at the end isn't cool, because it is. You know, I'm not gonna be one of those people and just say the prequels are complete horseshit and that's it. There is some fun to be had, but you know, 70% of that is Darth Maul, but 30% of it is Ewan McGregor. And this is kind of jumping around a little bit because I do want to talk about his upcoming projects. How do you feel about the kind of announced but put on ice, but announced then put back on ice kind of project that is the Star Wars story Obi-Wan movie?
I am much more excited I'm much more excited about that than I ever was or ever could be about Solo, for sure. Like I'm okay. Like, I wouldn't mind sort of that's an origin story that I feel needs to be told, where I think Han Solo, we've known Han Solo for a long time. We met him when he was young, like literally met him when he was young. And I don't feel like I needed another actor to step in and tell Han Solo's story. I have a chip on my shoulder about this whole Solo situation. So yes, I'm going to stop myself right now. And I am much more excited. I think it's a much more interesting origin story to be told is Obi-Wan's. I think that is, and it's more necessary. Whereas Solo's, I didn't think was completely necessary. So, and I'm excited about Ewan playing the role again. That's fine.
Oh, and I get that, but it's just like, yeah, for sure about Solo. I thought that was completely unnecessary to even have the movie. I would have been more happy with a Lando movie. I would have been more happy with a Lando movie if it was just Donald Glover doing This Is America like over and over again and trolling the audience. I mean, that would be great. I could watch that man dance for hours. He makes me question things about life and sexuality. Anyways, wow. But the Obi-Wan movie, it's like, what else are we gonna see? It's like we saw him from when he had the stupid little thing. Are we just gonna see, you know, the Padawan braid? Are we just gonna see from birth to then, or is it gonna be just him after episode 3 standing in a fucking desert for 40 years or whatever, 30 years, whatever? It's just like, what is the story that we're telling? Yes, I would see. This is the thing, and now I'm getting a Star Wars rant, but
here we go.
I think that
everybody buckle in.
Oh God, I think that the newest Star Wars just completely omitted the prequels to a fault. I mean, they happened. We have to acknowledge that they happened in the continuity of the story, and it's almost distracting at this point that they're just flat out not saying anything about them. I think that we should have gotten maybe some flashbacks, sprinkle in some Ewan as Obi-Wan, you know, in episode 7 or 8 or whatever. You know, we got that kind of at the Jedi Temple, or not Jedi Temple, but at Maz Kanata's cantina or whatever. You get, you know, Ewan McGregor's even credited as a cameo voice in there while like Rey's touching the lightsaber or whatever. But it's just like it's just so distracting at this point, and it's going to be such a shift because they just haven't mentioned anything from the prequels up until this point. And I get that that's what Rebels is supposed to be and blah, 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 but it doesn't matter because not everyone watches Rebels. Not everyone watches the Clone Wars cartoons. everyone watches these movies. So the fact that there's just nothing, and now we're gonna have to jump back in, literally probably 20 years later, to a Ewan McGregor led Obi-Wan movie of him standing, getting a sunburn on Tatooine, watching over Luke in his adolescence. I don't get it. I don't know why. Rant over. Sorry.
Sometimes you just gotta rant, man.
Shit. I mean, am I wrong? Fuck.
No, I think that obviously, if you're following the Star Wars universe, there's giant holes in everything all the time, and that's I don't know. I think that's kind of what keeps us coming back, isn't it? To see if they fix that this time. Are they going to fix that this time? Are they going to address that this time? That's why everybody keeps coming back. I mean, it's like it's become this. It's become a phenomenon. It's a culture, right? So everyone, if you either like Star Wars or you're wrong. That's just how that works. And then we also know, I mean, let's just be honest, these origin stories are not really to fulfill the little nerd holes in our little nerd hearts. They're to make Disney money. I mean, Solo, even if it didn't make as much as, any of the other Star Wars franchise films, it's still selling ginormous amounts of merchandise, and so when we think about it at this standpoint where Disney is, they're going to keep making these movies because people are going to keep buying tickets or streaming or buying the merchandise. And now we have, I mean, this can really tie into the opening of Star Wars Land at Disneyland next year.
Yeah,
it's so they're gonna crank this stuff out because they need more material. It's making them billions of dollars. And that's the bottom line.
But
so, that's a Star Wars rant. We're supposed to be talking about Ewan McGregor, John.
Well, I mean, it's relative just because of the proposed not proposed, I guess gonna happen Obi-Wan movie. But it is like with Solo, I think that was the first kind of like, okay, I think Rogue One was kind of the first like bruise on the banana, and everyone's like, oh, that was good. It's still Star Wars, so it could do no wrong, but it was a little weird, little different. And then episode 8 happened, Last Jedi, everyone lost their shit, and then Solo happened, everyone's just like, what the hell's wrong with Star Wars? And that's when news came out that maybe the Obi-Wan movie is going to get put on hold, or the Boba Fett movie, or the Yoda movie, God forbid. It's just like, no. Oh, I know. It's all these things adding up. And like you said, Disney is kind of a machine, but Disney has another machine in Marvel and Infinity War and all this stuff. And that they just could they're knocking it out of the park with every single time they're up to bat. How can they, and that was something that was kind of generated. How are they not doing the same good with a franchise like Star Wars, which is, like you said, a complete phenomenon?
I think it's because it's like beating a dead horse, isn't it? At this point, I mean, why do we? They're gonna continue. I mean, that's the realistic part. They're gonna continue. Like I said, they've got all these investments to support. They need more material. They need more merchandise. They need more storylines. They need more, fans and
merchandise. I just hear yogurt. I just hear what's his face, Mel Brooks, when you say that.
What?
I just hear Mel Brooks when you keep saying that. Merchandise.
Oh,
Schwartz.
Merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they've got a huge investment and they're going to keep doing it. And maybe the argument is, oh, well, we're the old people. So we had Star Wars growing up. And what's going to be here for the next generation and our kids? They need to make new Star Wars and new heroes and I get that. And that's all fine and good. But yeah, it's very frustrating for people who I literally saw Star Wars when I was 2 years old, like the first one, and at the Man's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. My dad and mom took me to go see Star Wars. Like the first week the first one came out, I vaguely they told me I fell asleep, so I don't really remember. I mean, I was a kid, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely in my life since I can remember. So are they producing new material and new stories and new heroes for this, these upcoming generations? I don't know. But it is.
All right. Well, all I know is that we've taken way too much time talking
This
about.
is totally your fault. You took it there.
I blame Twitter because I was not expecting that to be everyone's favorite Ewan McGregor roles. But you know, whatever. The people have spoken,
Right.
but we do need to move on, and we're going to move on to one of the more kind of polarizing films and polarizing performances by Ewan McGregor. Not by me. I liked it quite a bit, and I know this is one of your favorite ones, and that's Moulin Rouge.
Oh. Yes. So again, I identify very much with music. I am a big fan of musicals. I know that there are people. I like Baz Luhrmann. I think he's an interesting director, and it's definitely not mainstream. I think that Baz Luhrmann is sort of an acquired taste. Either you love him or you don't. You hate him. I'm a fan of Romeo and Juliet, and Moulin Rouge to me visually was breathtaking. I mean, it's right up my alley as far as what I enjoy visually and aesthetically. I'm not a huge Nicole Kidman fan. I could have taken her or left her. The story is beautiful, and I love the way that they sort of wove in these Toulouse-Lautrec and all like real historic figures in art and art history. And then here's Ewan's performance, which was poignant. And they actually let him sing. They didn't dub him in. And I think that's part of the charm of his performance in Moulin Rouge, is that he's really performing. And does he have the best singing voice? Hell no. But it's really lovely. I don't know. I just think it's a beautiful film. And I think he, in particular, again, stole my heart. That was it. Like, those performances from Ewan are the ones that just kill me. Like, literally destroy me, especially Moulin Rouge, because it's, obviously it's a tragedy, but beautiful film, and his performance is amazing.
I thought the film was fantastic. I have a theater background. I ate every bit of it up. I thought he did great. This is his first role where, like you said, they actually turned him loose, let him sing. There was dancing. It was just like watching a very good like Vegas show. It's more of it's like you go get dressed up for this kind of a movie. It's like watching a teleplay. And they just did great. And I know what you mean about Nicole Kidman, but I thought that she did great in this role. It's a ton of fun. It's smart. It's sexy. It's fast paced. It's super visual, oversaturated. It's just Nirvana eyegasms. It's just if you like that style though, because a lot of people don't. Like, a lot of people hated and panned, critics panned Romeo and Juliet. I thought it was great. I think I saw it at an age that I could appreciate it. I think I was early teens, and at that point it's very talk about 90s. It's very it's very saturated stylistically, but it is also very current of the times, and that was kind of the point of that film. And Moulin Rouge was way closer to the source material, but kind of the same way. It's not boring at all. There's so much to look at. It's a ton of fun, and a lot of people hated it, and I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I think, again, Baz Luhrmann can be an acquired taste. It can be, it can go either way for people, especially if they don't like musicals. This is not going to be the film for them. If people are really into sort of straightforward film, this is not going to be the movie for them. This film, I would sum up this film with one word, and that's epic. I think the production, the costumes, the makeup, I mean, everything. And you were saying you have a theater background, but you grew up watching musicals. Our households, our mom loved musicals. I loved musicals. You were exposed to a lot of that growing up. We used to go to plays. You used to go to we went to the Nutcracker, and so you have a lot of that in your blood. You were raised sort of exposed to that. So I can understand why you would like it. And I mean, I was obsessed with the DVD, and the DVD was so rich with Easter eggs at the time. I don't know if you remember, but there was like a big trend where DVDs would come out, and you'd have to do like a special little like up, down little like combination on your remote control to get these little Easter eggs to pop up. And I had the Moulin Rouge DVD was like a 2 disc set, and it had like a ton of these like special Easter eggs. So there's all these like behind the scenes and like just like rehearsal videos and everything where Ewan was learning how to do the steps. And not only Ewan, he's got an amazing supporting cast in this film as well. So, and everyone just does a beautiful job. But yes, Ewan is like heartbreaking and poignant and adorable, and just I can't say enough good things about this film.
Dr. Efren in the chat says, laugh out loud made me hate it outwardly, but I secretly liked it.
Maybe that's it. Maybe more people don't want to admit that they loved it.
Yeah.
I still watch it and just cry, like the ugly cry. Really? I'm just like, oh God, like it's just still.
Yeah, it's great. All right, moving on to talking about crying, and actually, I've already talked about this film quite a bit because we did the Tim Burton thing. Becky's still a little bit salty about that, but this is your chance to go back to the talking about Tim Burton. We're going to talk about Big Fish. Can't watch this movie without a box of tissues close by, and it's not just because Ewan McGregor is an attractive fellow. It's because it just pulls on those goddamn heartstrings so hard, and he is just so great in this film. I talked at length about it with Jay Manning from Classic Flicks about Big Fish. It's in my top, at least in my top 10 favorite films of all time. I love the hell out of this film. It's stylistically perfect. It's everything great that Tim Burton can do that kind of refuses to do at this stage of his career, which is really frustrating because I know how much of a great filmmaker he can be. Mm-hmm. Where it's different, where it's just like, Michael Bay puts out another crappy film, and no, we're not going to be talking about The Island because Michael B is kind of correct. I've had 2 of these giant beers. Michael Bay and ScarJo both are unpopular opinions, especially at this point. Even though ScarJo's making an appearance right there, but probably no one would have noticed unless I pointed it out. But it's just Big Fish is just so wonderful. And it's all basically, he's the main character, and it's all about him, and it's all about his tall tales. But and this isn't something that I mentioned while I was talking about the film, while we were talking about Tim Burton, but it's like Ewan McGregor's performance in Big Fish is so subtle and almost understated because he's kind of just narrating and living. It's really bizarre because the movie is so overblown and fantastical, but he is like the normal person in this because that's kind of how stories go when you're a storyteller, and all this is just like you put yourself as kind of the straight man, like the normal person during these events, and he's so understated while all this crazy stuff is happening around him. I just love the hell out of Big Fish, and I think you do as well. So here's your chance to right the wrong and talk about a Tim Burton film, Becky.
Yes. I am a little salty that you did Tim Burton, considering I'm the one that introduced you to Tim Burton when you were just a wee one. So,
and not just Tim Burton films, like actually introduced me to Tim Burton.
I took you to go meet Tim Burton, and then you do a Tim Burton show without me. All right. Yes. So Big Fish. Big Fish is amazing. Yes, Tim Burton is obviously known for sort of the darker fairy tale-esque stories that we know, like Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas. And then he just does these dumpster fire movies like Willy Wonka and like Planet of the Apes. And you're like, what are you doing? And then
it's like he has seizures or something.
Yeah. And then he comes out with Big Fish and you're like, this is why I love you. This is how I remember why you're so amazing. And yes, this film is beautiful. And Ewan McGregor's performance alongside of, this sort of heartbreaking performance, but also lovely performance by Albert Finney is amazing. And it's just every heartstring. Don't cry now. Like every heartstring is pulled. I don't know. I mean, it's witty and it's funny and it's beautiful, gorgeous to look like. And Jessica Lange.
Oh my God.
I love Jessica Lange. She can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. I'm an American Horror Story fan, and since she's left the show, I'm not as excited. But anyway, I digress. But Ewan's performance is so beautiful, and all these different scenarios, his interaction with Danny DeVito, and
Oh.
I just this movie just goes on and on and on for me. As much as I love Moulin Rouge, I have to say, I think, well, I don't know. I think that Big Fish is, for me, is maybe and Moulin Rouge are on par together. They're pretty they're at the same ranking for me. But I still watch Big Fish and just absolutely lose my mind every time. Every emotion, laughter, happiness, sadness. That movie takes you to every facet of emotions that there possibly could be watching a film. And it is just, I mean, he does such a beautiful job. And it's just, yeah. Oh my God. Obsessed.
If you don't get weepy, especially as a man, if you don't get weepy at the end of Big Fish or Toy Story 3, you're just not being.
Toy Story 3 just destroys me every time. I used to not even be able. Oh my God, no, can't.
I can't be in the same room when they're watching Toy Story 3. I'm fine up until that, like the scene,
yeah,
like the last 10 minutes, and I'm out. I'm out the room. I'm like, I have to function for the rest of the day. If you want me to be your father or your husband or whatever, I gotta leave because I'm just gonna need hugs. God, what was the other?
We need movie therapy after some of these films. There needs to be a support group. Oh, I just watched Big Fish, or oh my God, I just watched Toy Story 3. Just we all know. It's my name's Becky and I just watched Toy Story 3. Hi, Becky. Terrible.
Well, you assholes made me watch Terms of Endearment and Beaches all the time too.
Oh yeah, we did. You're forgetting Steel Magnolias also.
Oh God, it was like chemical warfare growing up in my house. It was just you know what? Oh, I know, right? Yeah. The one that really got to me that I think you were even kind of confused about, and I remember this so vividly, is watching Drop Dead Fred, and then I had to excuse myself as a really tiny child and just go be completely emotional, and then you're like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm fine. Just get out of my room.
No, Drop Dead Fred's no joke. That one still gets me. And I think it gets us too because the mean lady is our mom, but that's a whole other story. But
this show's bringing up a lot of shit.
I know. Well, that's what we get for only having the two of us. So, sorry, everyone. my brother and I are working through some things. We'll be back in a little while. What were we talking about? Oh, Ewan McGregor. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No. But okay, Big Fish. Let's get back here. So yes, Tim Burton, amazing. Ewan McGregor's performance in this. Unparalleled, I think, and we probably, if we watch this movie together, I think we'd both be useless blobs. So let's make sure never to do that.
Right.
Just for everyone else's sake.
Right. Moving on because I don't have anything to wipe my eyes with. Let's get to Stay. I don't think you saw Stay.
I haven't seen Stay. I can't believe that. I know there's a Ewan movie I haven't seen, and that's the one.
So I'm going to be completely, I'm not going to, this is going to be no spoilers just for Becky's sake, because you know what? And I even forgot Stay was not on the docket. And I really want to thank Chris from Legendary Mana, who's in the chat still. I think, I want to thank him for, hey, Coleman popped in. What's up, dude? But yeah, Chris brought it up during the poll, the voting poll. He said, I really like Stay. It's kind of more obscure and I like those kind of movies. And I'm like, oh, dude, I have no idea what that is. Because, when I was going through the filmography the other night looking, I saw the box art and I'm like, that doesn't look familiar. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I did see that. And it's one of those movies. It came out in 2005. It's one of those movies that got completely ripped apart. It got critically panned. People hated this film. And I'm so glad that I kind of gave it another chance, because on first viewing this film, if you're not in the right mindset for it, because it's just kind of, there's no marketing for it. It just looks like a generic kind of sit on the shelf at Blockbuster, God rest their souls, kind of movie that just collects dust. But then you look at the talent in it. It's got Ewan McGregor. It's got Naomi Watts. It's got, Ryan Gosling, an early performance from him. It has Bob Hoskins in it, has Janine Garofalo. I'm just like, wait a minute. This movie has way too much talent just to be a throwaway, piece of schlock. So, I watched it and I'm just like, okay, that was pretty good. Like it was very good. And then watching it again, That's where it is. I think that it should not be allowed to review upon first viewing, because I think it's definitely one of the, it's almost like a Memento a little bit. Not similar movies, and because they're completely different, but a movie like that where you just it literally kind of pays off at the very end, and it doesn't give you time to process what you just saw, and when you turn it off after the first viewing of it, it's just like, okay, I saw what they were going for. That's kind of a cheap trick. But then watching it a second time, and you pick up all these tiny little Easter eggs and these tiny little clues, it's a masterpiece. It's an absolute joyride. And again, Chris was in the chat patiently waiting to talk about this. So I just want to personally thank you, buddy, for putting that back on my radar, because I was just like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. And I even watched it again today because I just had a little bit of extra time. And upon a third viewing, it was even more rich than the second. So it's one of those movies. I implore you. I couldn't find it anywhere on VOD streaming sites for free. Amazon, you could rent it for like $2.99. Totally worth it, especially because I think the Amazon rentals are like 24 hours. But like, watch it, go have a meal, come back and watch it again. And I would be very surprised if you don't think that this movie is just anything but incredible. Becky, are you sold on seeing Stay?
Well, now that you just listed the cast, like yeah, absolutely. Like, I love Janine Garofalo, like, for sure. But yeah, I would totally. I all you had to do is say Ewan McGregor, and I would probably watch it anyway. But that's, yeah, definitely on my radar.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And if you want to go watch a good there's an explains video by Chris Stuckman. He does such a good job. If you watch it and you watch it again, and you're still like, huh? He's got like a 35-minute like explains breakdown of the movie, and it just kind of, I don't like those a lot of times, because it's almost like, here, I'm going to spell it out for you, stupid, kind of thing. But his breakdown is actually pretty great, which I enjoy quite a bit. So watch the movie, watch it a couple times, and yeah, like Chris said in the chat, BD Wong also incredible. He's in the film too. He doesn't have a huge part in it, but it's just so much fun. It's just for those film goers. And I can see why this didn't do anything in the movie theater, because, think about sitting in a movie theater. People are just loud. Babies are crying. People are shoving their face with popcorn, being obnoxious. This is a movie that rewards people that really want to immerse themselves in a cinematic experience. Some of the things in there, you will blink and it is gone. If you blink, you'll miss it. One of those very rewarding films that you just have to sit there and just kind of soak in. But yeah, so it's not total. Yeah. Oh yeah. Great. Chris keeps giving me things in the chat. It's written by David Benioff, that, one of the creators of Game of Thrones. So that's another ringing endorsement.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely I wanted to get that in before we did the show, but it just didn't happen. So
yeah, well, leave this show knowing that you're in for a treat. And if you don't like it, I mean, a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people didn't like it even after, I even saw some reviews after people watched it a couple times. They still think it's kind of just pretentious art house, schlock. But I thought it was fantastic. Next up was the men that stare at goats. I didn't see it. And did you see it?
I did not see that one either. Those are the two.
Moving along. Next. Let's talk about some, we're kind of rounding it out. Let's talk about some of his animated, because he, you think Ewan McGregor, you think, kind of doughy-eyed, kind of funny, dopey kind of dude sometimes, but you don't think of him as a voice actor. And he has had a couple voice acting roles. 3 come to mind: Valiant, which was not that great; Robots, which I actually enjoyed. I think it's kind of underrated. And then he was Lumiere on the live action Beauty and the Beast,
which I think he did a beautiful job. It's funny because a lot of people, as a Disney nerd geek person, me, a lot of people in the Disney nerddom just did not did not enjoy the live action Beauty and the Beast. And I think it's because I took you to go see the animated Beauty and the Beast when it was first in the movie theater. I don't know if you remember that. But I think Ewan did a fine job. I think it was adorable. I really enjoyed the live action version of the film. I thought it was cute. I thought is it like a Academy Award winning groundbreaking stuff? No, probably not. But I enjoyed it, with my son. I took my son to see it, and we saw it in the theater, and it was lovely. And yes, I do remember now that you had to remind me that Ewan played Lumiere, and I do remember enjoying it. I was like, and I remember saying, "Oh, it's Ewan. It's Ewan in there." So yes, I enjoyed that also.
I thought he did a great job in that role, especially him singing they let him, they took a lot of liberties and they kind of switched it up a bit. Overall, the movie was pretty great. Dan Stevens wasn't the best. I like Dan Stevens in certain things. I loved him in The Gift, but I don't know, for some reason him as the Beast and the human Beast didn't work for me as much. As well as Emma Watson, she kind of had to grow on me a little bit during the film.
Yeah,
I thought at first, like when I heard that was her casting as Belle, I wasn't super excited about it, but during the film it does. She's not. Oh man, I can't remember the name of the original actress that plays Belle, but she belted it out in the animated, where Emma Watson was just kind of more subtle. Like she didn't really, it was just very kind of scaled back a little bit. So, but besides that, I thought him doing Be Our Guest was fantastic. I thought he nailed the song. I thought he nailed the tone as Lumiere. Am I saying that right? Is it Luminaire or Lumiere?
It's Lumiere. And Paige O'Hara is the original Belle, by the way.
Paige O'Hara. Thank you. Yes. Paige O'Hara, just amazing voice as Belle.
Iconic.
And not to be confused with, because I always thought that her and
Ariel.
Jodie Benson,
right?
That did Ariel was the same person, but it's not. But Paige O'Hara was great as Belle, but it's just a different take on it. You go in expecting certain things, and especially when they're singing the same songs and everything. It just kind of like you're like, oh, this isn't what it's supposed to sound like, or it's not what it's supposed to be. But then Ewan McGregor pops on and does that musical number. Mm-hmm. Absolutely fantastic. I think he nailed it.
Are you talking about Be Our Guest?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think he did nail it, and he kind of brought it back to what we know to be the iconic sort of classic Beauty and the Beast vibe. The original was done. The original Lumiere was Jerry Orbach, who was really surprised. That to me was a very surprising performance in the original Beauty and the Beast, because he's like, was he on like, what crime show was he on forever?
He was like on one of the CSIs or something.
Yeah, and then he was the dad in Dirty Dancing, and that's how I knew him. And then he was Lumiere, and you're like, that's Jerry Orbach, but it was, and he did a great job. And then Ewan definitely picked up where and kind of made it his own, but he did do a fine job. And I agree with you about Emma Watson. I think she sort of had to grow on me too. I always imagined, I don't know why this popped in my head, but who I think would have been amazing as Beast was like Michael Fassbender. Like he would have been a really cool
absolutely.
Beast, right? Like I just love Michael Fassbender. That's a whole other show. We could do a whole other show about Michael Fassbender.
That's a damn good idea, because I could Fassbender out quite a bit. But
he's rad. Like Frank is another whole. Anyway, but I think he would have been a really cool Beast, and I think that would have been a better choice. So, but yeah, Lumiere, Ewan, I'm okay with it.
It was. Yeah, I just thought that they kind of fell on their face casting Dan Stevens, but for the most part, great, good movie. And then, did you see Robots?
I don't think I did see Robots, but I feel like that was on my list as well. Who's Robots? Who did that one? It's animated, right?
Yeah, it is animated. It's CGI animated. He's the main. He's I think it's Stanley Cobblepot or something like that. He's just a kind of Ewan McGregor type character, where it's set in this kind of robotic world, but he's this doughy-eyed, I'm going to be better than the sum of my parts kind of deal, and it's that kind of story. Mel Brooks is in it. He does fantastic in the role. Oh, what the lady that plays the MILF from all the American Pie movies? She's great. Oh God, why can't I
Karen
remember her
Black.
name? Yes, she's in it as well.
I did her makeup once.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. Like just like a touch up. She came into the place I was working, and she and one of the guys who plays like a reoccurring role on Will and Grace, they were together. And but I can't remember that actor's name. But I could point him out if you showed him to me. But yeah, she came in and they were going out for the night to have like cocktails and see a show, and she asked me to touch up her makeup. But she was very nice.
Yeah,
Very nice
I
lady.
mean, it had some great people. There were some other people that were in it, but it is fun. It's a nice. It's better than maybe it was marketed as. It was kind of because he did Valiant too, and that was just kind of that was almost like VOD quality, where he was like this bird. Yeah, that movie wasn't great. I mean, he did fine, and I appreciate him trying to do, you know, these kind of acting roles because I think he does a good job. He does have a very distinct voice. He has this kind of very optimistic voice where it's just an uplifting thing, even as something like a Mark Renton all the way to something as a Luminaire. It's just you smile when you see a good Ewan McGregor performance.
I agree. And that's been like just about for the last 20 years. I mean, it's like I'm always rooting for Ewan, always. And I will continue to be a fan forever and ever until he does
Absolutely.
something really stupid. But until
Yeah, I know.
then,
Like everyone's coming out and doing some dumb shit. Like
yeah.
I don't think that he's gonna Kevin Spacey or Louis C.K. anything up.
I hope
I
not,
just
man.
I know you
I mean,
never know.
it was kind of in that weird zone for a minute when he had that acceptance speech, and then he was like, he made it all awkward, and then his girlfriend wound up leaving him after that, and everything. It
Yeah.
was like he was thanking his wife. It's like, I don't know. The whole thing is super weird, and I'm like, not Ewan. Don't be a jerk, man. Like, but you know, whatever. I don't have to live with him. I just need to watch his films. So but again, if he's doing the other janky stuff that the other guys have been pulled out and called out doing, then obviously I can't support that. But right now, it's still okay. He's still okay. He hasn't done anything super dumb, so that's good.
Yeah. I mean, even Morgan Freeman's not safe anymore. It's just crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh, but and then just to kind of round it out, let's just talk a little bit about his upcoming projects. We already talked about the proposed Obi-Wan film, but also Christopher Robin. That was as close as crying. That was as close to crying as I got watching a trailer. Oh my god!
Yeah, yeah, it looks fantastic. Winnie the Pooh is probably one of my least favorite Disney characters, I'd say.
Yeah.
Even though he's a staple, like I've always, whatever. But I am excited to see Robin. I'm excited to see Christopher Robin, and I hope that it is everything that the trailer, every bit as magical as the trailer is making it out to be.
They did those voices just spot on. Like I know that the original person that did Pooh Bear is long gone, but whoever they hired to do it now is just like it's like listening to the whatever the 1970s 60s cartoons again. That just looks like another one where it's going to be like a Toy Story 3 or a Big Fish while I'm watching it, or even like the first Muppets movie, the Jason Segel Muppets movie. I had a hard time getting through that. But this looks like it's going to be tough. And I, like you, I do not think that Winnie the Pooh is kind of the strongest Disney franchise, but the fact that they took it to like this way, or it's almost like a TED where there's just very stuff and stuff, but it's awesome. And it just looks, like you said, just magical. And it just looks like, I'm just like, oh God, like, it kind of looks like Hook, but not, but where he's just going to be going through and it's just gonna be like, oh, I have all these antiquated toys and stuffed animals from my past, and it's just going to be a giant nostalgic mess. But I look forward to it very much, and I think he's going to give a great performance. The last one I want to talk about, I'm so fucking excited about, is Dr. Sleep. And that is, if I'm a giant Stephen King fan. and that is going to be the sequel to The Shining, where he is going to be Danny Torrance as an adult. Oh my God, I can't wait for this film.
You know, we were just talking about this the other day, and it was the first time I'd heard about it, and I'm interested. I am definitely intrigued for sure. This could go really wrong, though. You know, you realize that some Stephen King stories do not translate well to film, and we know
Dark Tower kidding me?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, going all the way back to Maximum Overdrive, but I digress again. We know that Stephen King can go either way on film. So I'm hoping, and especially something to me so sacred as The Shining. You know how I feel about The Shining, and you know that this is I am a huge horror movie fan, and The Shining is definitely one of those films to me that is 100% iconic and cannot be paralleled. So I'm really hoping they handle this with care, because this could really get scary, and I don't mean like scary good.
I think it's the right people involved. From what I've heard, I don't think that the Dark Tower happened, and that just ruined me. It just was so horrible, and the source material was so amazing that it's just awful. But it happened. The movie, the reboot, and it was just fantastic, and it did so well in the box office. So I think that people making good Stephen King adaptations is just very popular right now. Dare I say, maybe even what we're going into, as far as, everyone says comic book fatigue, definitely Star Wars fatigue. Maybe we're going to see stuff like it, them really trying again at these kind of horror franchises and doing them correctly, because you don't have to be a horror fan to have enjoyed the reboot of it. It was an absolute great film, for a bunch of different kinds of movie goers and genre lovers. So I think that knowing all that, and how precious The Shining is, I think that they're going to get this right. And I'm just going in with rose-colored glasses. And like you said, maybe I shouldn't, because Dark Tower and some other, Stephen King adaptations have really been hit or miss. They either turn into classics like Carrie, or they turn into absolute fart bags. And I just hope that they don't do that with Dr. Sleep.
Right. And I'm like I said, I'm intrigued. I don't know that I'm excited yet, but I am intrigued. Like I said, the story, and I don't think anybody could tell that story better on film than Kubrick. To me, in my mind, that's how I feel about that. So we'll see. We'll see.
It's Mike Flanagan. So Mike Flanagan's a fantastic director.
Well, we'll still see.
Oh,
he's no Kubrick. Come on, you got to give me that.
I mean, there's kind of only one Kubrick. It's not fair.
And that's my point. That's my point.
But yeah, that's all the ones I had on the list. That's Real Actors number 2, episode 2, about Ewan McGregor. If you guys and gals still love this format, I will definitely bring it back. Next week, I'm going to be switching it up a little bit. We're going to go back to Director's Cut, and we're going to be doing Paul Thomas Anderson, actually. Paul Thomas Anderson films, and that's going to be with the very awesome Jason Alt from Brainstorm Brewery. So he's going to be joining me to talk about Paul Thomas Anderson films. That's going to be an interesting one. I gotta really kind of brush up my knowledge on that one. So Director's Cut will be coming back, but we'll keep this kind of rotation of spotlighting directors and actors as well. Also, please join me on Wednesday, my Magic the Gathering following, for the very first stop on the summer road trip for the Hive Mind. I will be interviewing Mr. Sam Tang from Kitchen Table Magic Podcast on location at Bellevue Mox Boarding House, part of Card Kingdom. Going to be absolutely fun. I'm nervous as hell, but it's going to be a great time. But for this episode, I want to thank my special guest once again, my sister, Mrs. Becky Morgan. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Instagram right now at Rebecca Morgan Creative. And I'm floating around on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel, Rebecca Morgan, but I am not making a ton of videos right now. Most of the videos are makeup Disney bound videos to kind of help your Disney bound look. So that's kind of fun. But I'm also painting a lot. So I sell my art, which is usually, again, dark Disney themed. So if you want to go to at Rebecca Morgan Creative at Instagram, my Instagram, then you'll find me there.
Awesome. There's even a piece right behind you.
Oh yeah. Oh, my chili down. But I'm constantly creating new pieces. So I post everything I paint there on Instagram.
Perfect. Awesome. And I do want to thank the people that joined us in the chat. Chris from Legendary Mana. Absolutely awesome. Dr. Ephraim from Pat Crack Fever. We also had Coleman Yeti in here. We also had Eric from Man Cave MTG pop in as well as my beautiful wife, Miss Dunning. Mrs. Dunning popped in as well. To say a nice comment about the new set. So leaving the comments and all that about what you think about the new rearrangement, that we are in the new location. So yeah, I just kind of threw it up today. Hope everyone enjoys it. You can find me if you want to follow me on the social medias. I'm mostly on Twitter at OrzovDunn. You could also find me on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as Jonathan Dunning, or find me on Instagram as They Said We Said. So until next time, everyone, we'll see you at the movies.